It's Friday, May 13th. Hopefully not an unlucky day for anyone out there. I'm here at Moscow Marsh, which is just west of the little village of Moscow and south of Camden Lake. It's a wetland that's been maintained and bermed by Ducks Unlimited Canada. And it's probably about 20 or more acres of cattail marsh with open water areas scattered throughout. It's a nice little place to come each year. You can get black terns potentially. They don't seem to be here much now compared to a number of years ago, but also pied-billed grebes, least bitterns, marsh wrens, lots of things like that. So, and they're all in fairly good numbers here, so we'll see what we can get. I can certainly hear lots of marsh wrens singing right now. There's a short trail that comes in along the east side of the marsh, and it basically winds around the south side of the marsh too. And then that's probably what most people would walk. It's very short, only about half a kilometer or so. But you could spend a good half hour or an hour here just looking and observing and listening to the birds out in the marsh. Just walking south from the marsh now on some trails that lead into the fields here. These are crown land fields. Most people don't come back here, they just stay around the marsh and look. I was involved years ago in some crown land, grassland restoration back here, so it's interesting to come and look at that. I think the dogs are going to want to swim. It's getting pretty hot out. Feels like about 27. This is a view of one of the fields we planted up about a year before I retired, so probably 2016 or 2015. There's a mix of deciduous and coniferous trees here, although the coniferous are certainly more apparent. The leaves are still coming out on the deciduous trees. White pine, tamarack or larch, silver maple. Some of the ones I can see. Here's a section of white spruce. And I remember as we went further to the north, the land became quite a bit wetter. So the species composition for planting changed. Looks like some bur oak here too that we planted. I honestly can't remember the mix we did, but there's quite a range of stuff. These oaks are about 3 feet tall or a bit higher. They're slower growing obviously than the coniferous trees. This is the place, I guess, where we put in the silver maple a little more heavily and the tamarack too, just because the soil was damper here, I think, and poorer maybe. They're doing okay. They're scattered. Mostly red maple or silver maple and tamarack back in this northern section. Well, that was interesting to see the old field again where we planted the trees. Most of them are doing fairly well. As can always be expected, there's some mortality or stunted trees, what have you, but that's expected. Some of the conifers are growing in pretty dense. They may want to consider thinning at some point just to keep it more open. Not sure if they'll do that or not. And the grassy fields we walked through on the way down are looking good. They were planted, I believe, with a general hay mix for the most part. They had considered doing a more native grass mix, but it was going to be fairly exorbitantly expensive, so they opted with the cheaper hay mix, I believe. And it's taken root. Prior to this, the government was actually allowing farmers to farm the lands, and it was just decided during my later years that that shouldn't be done. Just running up here to get a snake off the road, but he's off. Car coming. Yes, as I was saying, it was decided just a few years before I left that government was going to take back control of these crown land field areas and plant them into vegetation that was more wildlife friendly. And that's not hard to do compared to crops, which are not wildlife friendly at all for the most part. So they're nicely planted in the grass hay mixture now, and grassland birds will be able to use them for nesting in and for shelter and that kind of thing, as well as other animals can use them for feeding and shelter too. So that's a win-win. So just to the north of me here, you can see one of the fields that was planted up in the hay crop. It's still looking pretty brown with all the dead grass from last year, but you can start to see the new green grass coming up in between. That duff layer, when all the dead grass dies and falls to the bottom, provides habitat for various species, as well as nesting preferences for a lot of grassland nesting birds. So if these fields hadn't been replanted back to the grass mixture, currently they'd be just sitting as plain dirt, because they would have had the crops taken off them last summer and have been plowed and tilled, ready to accept new seed crop this year. And for many years, that's what these fields did. They just went through that constant rotation of crops and then bare dirt. And the bare dirt didn't provide much in the way of habitat at all. Virtually no habitat. So this is a far better improvement now that they can exist as fields. I can see a few small trees coming up in this field. There'll have to be a determination at some point whether to have a late cut of the hay just to reduce or prevent trees from coming back in again, if indeed grasslands are what the long-term preferred route is. And I believe that was what we were thinking at the time, is that we'd maintain these as grasslands. So we'll see how she goes, but certainly an improvement over the way it was. I swear this Zoe's regaining some of her youth. She's pulling on the rope like a little tractor trailer going down a 45-degree slope. Almost pulling me off my feet sometimes, and she only weighs about 40 pounds. Of course, I'm coming down in weight, so I guess the effect is bigger. Why I do this, I don't know. I do need to get out a little more on my own. It's a little hard to enjoy things to the fullest sometimes when you're got a dog tied to your waist and the other one cruising along behind you. Not that the one behind me is all that difficult to deal with, but you always have to be aware of potential dangers or other walkers and things like that. Boy, this has been a beautiful day though, besides all the complaining. Actually, I'm not really complaining, am I? I don't think so. Just stating a few facts. Had a couple bitterns fly out of the cattails back there really close to the shore, so that was nice. Oh, there we have it, another adventure coming to an end. Hope you enjoyed this little outing at Moscow Marsh and associated fields to the south. It's pretty windy, so there'll probably be a fair amount of wind noise on this. I haven't yet got myself a decent setup for dealing with wind, but hopefully you can hear what I've been saying. Anyhow, I'll sign off. Look forward to new adventures coming shortly.